Well, thanks to the increased widespread adoption of cloud computing, smart devices and social networks, you don't need to look very far to notice the booming digital economy being fostered here in Australia. In a recent report, Deloitte has put the value of the digital economy at $79 billion this year alone, and by 2020 it will be worth $135 billion. So how can businesses get on the bandwagon and benefit from this digital transformation? Well, James Wooster is the Vice President of Australia and New Zealand at Software AG and joins us in the studio. James, welcome to the program. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Dan.
Now, the digital economy is something that we often talk about on the program.
Yep.
Define it for us. What is it?
So I guess our take on it is that if you look across organisations across every vertical industry, so from shoe shops to steelworks, increasingly they are becoming dependent upon digital technology, computer software, computer hardware. In fact, they cannot function without those things, which is very different to a number of years ago. The primary driver for that is the internet, but at the next level down, I guess, it's social, mobile and cloud-based technologies.
And is it different to the sharing economy? We often hear about the likes of Airtasker, Uber, Airbnb. How do you define the difference between the sharing economy and the digital economy, or are they one and the same?
Well, so there are some similarities, actually. The way that we take a view of the digital economy is that most of our customers today are being forced into developing new business solutions and IT platforms based upon the increasing demands of the consumer. If you consider for a moment that, as of now, approximately, there are 2 billion internet users, 5 billion internet devices, and about 7 billion mobile phone contracts. If you consider those are also consumers from many of the organisations that we deal with, that puts a level of stress on an enterprise that we have never, ever seen before.
You mentioned, I guess, the emergence of the internet. Talk us through some of the other key drivers that are behind this digital transformation that we have seen over the past 10, 15 years.
So I guess cloud-based infrastructure is really at the forefront of what's driving a lot of Australian business at the moment. Certainly that's our perception. I came across an interesting survey. It was a Forrester report back in November last year, and they surveyed a number of enterprises in Europe, Australia and North America. If we look at Europe and North America, of those companies that were surveyed, only 50 to 60% had deployed cloud-based infrastructures in a production environment. I'm pleasantly surprised to tell you that in Australia it's 86%.
Is that right?
And that's driving a whole set of change and innovation that even the Europeans and North Americans I don't think are seeing just yet.
Wow. So what about that change? What type of impact does it have on productivity?
So look, these organisations that we're dealing with are mid to large scale enterprises, and indeed Software AG is one of those ourselves. We're a $1 billion company. And so we understand that we need to help our customers both simplify their IT infrastructure and also optimise it ideally at the same time. And so what we're doing for our customers, and indeed we've done for ourselves, is introduce this concept of a digital business platform. It's a layer of software that sits between the existing applications, the data, the people, the IT assets, and the things that their customers, their consumers, their supply chain are trying their level best to interact with. So it's a layer where you can compose what you've got, you can sweat your existing assets and deliver very quick business outcomes. And by the way, that's on-premise and in the cloud.
Let's talk costs. How expensive is it to build that layer that you speak of, and what's the impact on the company's bottom line? Do you see ever an improvement?
So that's a good question. So we are very particular about the kind of business and IT programs we engage with. So we insist, where we can, that we develop joint business cases with our customers. I've seen from my own personal experience back in Europe, in other large software companies, that IT projects often start with no clear business outcome, no KPIs, no underlying business case. So step number one for us, build a business case, socialise that business case and get the buy-in from the stakeholders and measure as you go. The question is, where do you begin? And we have tools and methodologies that can assist in that.
Talk us through the demand that you see for that type of service, that type of product here in Australia. And is Australia well positioned to capitalise on some of those growth drivers in this space?
Yes. So I've got to say I'm pleasantly surprised in what I see in Australia. I think, and bear in mind I moved here just at the start of the year, I see a level of innovation and calculated risk-taking that allows us to do things in Australia and New Zealand, of course, that maybe wouldn't get airtime, certainly in the UK, France or Germany. That allows organisations to embrace this kind of digital economy and derive quicker output, quicker value than elsewhere in the world. And I just love that. I think that's great.
We'll be watching Software AG very closely. James Wooster, thank you for joining us on the program and welcome to Australia. Great to have your expertise here.
Thank you, Dan.